Okay.
All right. So we are here again Wednesday, every Wednesday. Thank you, Jane. Every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. And we are here to answer your questions about coaching and your career. So we look at your career as a vessel for you to reach your potential, as the pathway for you to do what you came here on earth to do. We spend a lot of time with work. It's, most of our time is spent in working with a team or working on a project, working for money. And we want to have it be a thing of, oh, I'm not just, trying to get to retirement or trying to get to the weekend, but how can we have fun doing it? How can this be incredibly meaningful to me? So that's our overall approach. But we have had the honor of having Drew Allison with us for the past 2 months. And he has been sharing his journey in the job search and using his job search as a way to develop himself. So it's not even just in the job, but in the search of it. How is he learning and growing? How is his search helping him realize his potential? And it's been a beautiful journey. And I am sad to say in some ways that Drew's got some jobs. He's got some things lined up because it means that we're not going to have him as much as we've had him in the past. But really appreciate you, Drew. Really appreciate you opening up your process, opening up your heart as you've been sharing with us for the past 2 months, how you've gone about your job search. And so we figured it would be appropriate to talk about onboarding, because as you are now onboarding, you're taking us every step of the way with you. How do you onboard well? How do so I'm just throwing that out there, Drew, and take it away. Give us any updates you want from anything that you think is important for our listeners to hear, and then take us into onboarding.
I appreciate it, George. The honor is mutual. It's been a real pleasure to be here every week, and I definitely plan on popping in as often as I can and being able to listen to other people. And
awesome.
This is a support. This is a co-created space with all of us, and it's something that's grown to mean a lot to me. And if you're meeting me for the first time, what brought me to Career Lab was basically the week before Christmas, I found out that my job was being eliminated. I had a little bit of time, a little runway before that was happening, but I jumped into action and I started networking. I started wind dating, which is a Right Foundation concept, really geared around connecting with people intentionally to impact one another's lives positively. That's pretty much it. And I've been a wind dating machine for the past 8 to 9 weeks. So much so that even though I've started a new job, spoiler alert, I still have these residual networking events and wind dates that are on my calendar. And I had to let my supervisor know. I was like, I still have some of these these commitments that I want to honor. And of course, they were more than supportive of it. And every job that I'm doing right now, I've gotten into the sales consulting and sales contracting world. And I have 3 contracts that I'm working on. Each one requires me to be networking, requires me to be going out there and expanding my network. So all the skills that I honed and the muscles that I continued to grow over the past 8 to 9 weeks are going to serve me in what I'm doing now, which is a beautiful series of events. But like George mentioned, now that I have a few contracts and I'm starting to go through the onboarding process, I've really been thinking, what does it mean to onboard at a new company, and what are my responsibilities versus the responsibilities of the company? And a lot of that's going to determine how long the company's been around, how big it is, and how much attention they pay to the onboarding experience of new employees. And in some instances, no matter what, however the onboarding experience is, it's really vital data to help you understand the company culture that you've just joined. And it's going to give you way more information than the interviews ever did. Now, it's not necessarily going to be an indictment one way or another. You're not going to lose faith with a bad onboarding experience, but it definitely can leave a bad taste in your mouth. But one thing I noticed about myself is that, whether it's this experience now or onboardings I've done in the past, when I've gone home to complain about a bad onboarding experience to my wife or to a coach, usually I realize that I'm not taking enough responsibility for the process. I think onboarding is very often looked at as the new employee walks in, they sit down, and it is the company's responsibility to give them everything they need to succeed. And sure, there might be some validity to that, but in the real world where companies are not always operating at 100% or in an ideal state, and odds are you've been brought in to help improve the culture, improve the processes, you're going to go through something that is less than optimal, less than ideal. And so I kind of have a checklist of things that I like to keep in mind as I'm onboarding and things that I like to do. First and foremost, I have my own technology checklist because I don't know if the people that I'm going to be onboarding with will know to sign me up for everything I need to be signed up for. So, through my experience, I've got, everything from, the customized email signature to the, two-step authentication. One thing that often gets missed is LinkedIn collateral. Are there LinkedIn banners that have been created by the marketing team or the internal graphics team? And can I get access to those so I can begin updating my LinkedIn and celebrating this new job? All sorts of things on that front. The other thing I like to look at when I'm onboarding is how many different people can I have a conversation with in the first week on the job? And when I recently onboarded with a company that has about 16 employees, and I made a point to schedule a one-on-one conversation with about 8 of those employees in the first week. And I really made an effort to sit down and get to know them, give them a chance to get to know me, get to know my background. And that serves 2 functions. One, you're the new person. There's going to be a lot of talk about you. This gives you a chance to kind of set the record on who you are, the narrative of who you are, where you came from. So people are talking about you in a way that's informed with what you want to know. But the other thing it does is it really gives me an insight into the company culture. Who are the people that toe the company line? Who are the people that push things a little bit? Who are the rebels? Who are the the folks that conform? And how can I leverage all of those relationships to make the most out of that experience? And a big thing about my onboarding experience that I've learned and relearned this time around is at some point in this process, I will feel afraid. At some point, I'm going to feel angry. At some point, I'm going to think, oh my God, I've made the worst decision of my life. Why am I here? I actually had that feeling.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Keep going.
No, it's true. And I met with one of my coaches over the weekend and had just a wonderful session about all the emotions that were coming up for me. I was feeling fear. I was feeling angry. There was elements of hurt, and I got to give those emotions space, but space in a separate area. So I didn't necessarily bring all of that straight into the office, but I was able to learn from it, harvest those learns, and then come into the office with really constructive things to say, constructive questions, constructive ideas, all that sort of good stuff. And so just knowing that those emotions are coming has been huge for me, because it's otherwise you do start to doubt. And there are times when your intuition is telling you the right thing, where maybe it's not the right job, and maybe there are really tangible reasons for it, and there's conversations to be had. But more often than not, in my experience, it's growing pains. It's going through moments of the unknown. And there's a psychology term called disorienting dilemma that we use at Wright a lot. And a disorienting dilemma is really it's a significant moment that takes you out of your comfort zone and puts you at risk of being hijacked by your emotions. And disorienting dilemmas happen all the time. And when I've been onboarding, I've been exposed to those a lot more than I would in a daily routine. So like things like not being able to access the Google Drive at the exact moment that I needed to look at a document for a meeting. Disorienting dilemma. Suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I'm not prepared for this meeting. Am I the right person for this job? How come I can't get this to work? What's happening? And those emotions really start to creep in. And awareness for me plays a huge part in just kind of managing that. But George, those are some of my kind of, sort of high level thoughts on onboarding. As always, I love your bottom lines on my rants.
Awesome. Thank you. So there's a few things I want to share about here. and do a room reset as we've got people joining in. This is Career Lab Wednesday, every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. And I want to remind everyone that we have a topic every week, but our primary goal is to serve you. So any question that you have, it does not have to be about the topic. Anything, any little thing you're working on could be a quick question, or it could be a big question. It could be something that you're working on in terms of how you affect change in your entire organization. Any of that stuff is fair game here. Our job is to support you in that. So putting that out there. And as you're sharing about onboarding, Drew, there's a few things that I'm hearing that I think are great to underline. One is that most companies don't have a great onboarding process. They might not even have, that might not even be a thing. And so if that's the case, then what I was hearing you say was noticing how you engage with that. And there's something that we go deep into in Right Foundation training about drama, the drama triangle. This is Drew, I know you've done some events on this as well as I have in the past too. And this is something anybody can look up and learn more about. There's stuff about it on YouTube. Basically, if I'm going into a new job and there's not an onboarding process, I can complain about it. I can say, geez, this is not working well. And I can, say it's their problem. But if I'm doing that, I'm not being effective. And things are probably going to stay the same. And I'm just going to learn to deal with that. I'm already setting myself up to be unsatisfied and to be a superior butthead to everybody around me. That doesn't work that well. And so it's a real opportunity if you're going into a spot and things aren't exactly the way you want it to be, to say, okay, does not by the way mean handling everything. Some people go in and try to rescue and say, okay, great, there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. There's a problem, I'm going to fix it. There's a problem, I'm going to fix it. Don't do that either. That's drama too. That's rescue. And it doesn't really, it often does not address the deeper issues. So that's something to be aware of. I'm not going to talk a whole lot more about it other than to say, if you're going into a new job, or even if you're at the job that you're at right now, notice where you want to blame somebody else or where you feel ashamed about something and where you want to justify yourself. Those are three things that I find really helpful: is blame, shame, and justification. Noticing where that is, and just start with noticing it. Another thing in learning about how we as humans learn is that if I try to do something too quickly and I say, oh, I'm never going to blame or shame or justify again, it just means I've made myself oblivious to the fact that I'm doing it. So it better to start with, how am I doing it? And just look for the ways I'm doing it. And then we can talk more. Yes. Thank you, Jane. Thank you. There's a link to the talk I did on this. It's on YouTube if you want to learn more about it. So I think that's a fantastic point you're bringing up, Drew, about when you're onboarding, there's going to be stuff about the culture that doesn't work. It's probably one of the reasons they're hiring you is they need help. So just be looking at it.
Well,
so all of that.
2 seconds. I'll just underline real quick. That victimhood, it comes in all the freaking time. And it is not something to be eradicated. It's something to be aware of and then to deal with. And then I was a victim this morning when I woke up and I had a little sniffle and a cough, and I was like, well, this day's ruined. I can't do anything now. And then you get out of bed and make it happen. But what you mentioned about the drama triangle being applicable when you are onboarding or if you're in an existing job, a lot of these best practices around onboarding are really applicable if you're in a current job or getting a promotion or moving departments or moving offices, or if you just decide you want to go to work with a new mindset and you want to reintroduce yourself and you're feeling like you need a little bit of a refresh. So it's things that are applicable kind of at all stages of a career, not only just starting a brand new company.
Awesome. Yeah. The advantage of starting is that you're a fresh pair of eyes. But absolutely, I'm learning about ways that I haven't shown up as powerfully as I could in the past week. So there we go. Well, I want to I want to hear from people and hear how we can serve you today. What questions do you have? Oh, and that's another thing is if you're not able to join in directly here on this Zoom link, that's fine. Of course, I love it when you can. But if you have questions, you can type them into the comment section on YouTube or on LinkedIn or however you're viewing in here. So I would love to hear, how can we serve you today? Scott, I hear you're coming off mute. How can we help you today? What you working on?
Couple of questions. Couple questions with regard to the search. Too much, too little is what I regarded. Sometimes too much information is shared and too little information is shared. I've got a background that's really detailed, but oftentimes it's necessary to sometimes share much more than you should. And at the same time, so you don't be excluded. So, but at the same time, it's perceived as being too long. That's number one question. That's probably the most vital.
It sounds like an observation. What's the question in it?
Well, the question is that what is regarded as being too much or too little?
Oh, okay. So you're asking what's too much?
Yeah. Is it current things that you're doing, or is it you're training so that many times you are to the interviewer perceived as not being capable of doing things?
Where are you applying that? Can you give us some more detail?
Okay. Perhaps too much information, but I'm an urban planner, and oftentimes there's all kinds of aspects of the work that we do. That's with regard to AI and a lot of different other things as well. Mm-hmm. But my own is with regard to historic preservation, economic development, and there's all issues pertaining to land, civil engineering. And oftentimes it's perceived by the interviewer that you don't have that skills. You don't have the training in those things, but you do. I do. Okay,
so you're saying that you're finding that in your interviews, your assessment is that the interview thinks you don't have the training and the skills when in fact you do.
Yes, exactly true. You're right, George.
Okay, got it. Scott, this may be more of a communication thing. Just given the little bit of information you've given me, I suspect you are quite a strong analyzer type, mind and personality style. Does that land? Or you do planning? You're something of an engineer, and you're really good with data and details and making sure that things work.
Exactly. You're really on top of it.
Okay. And then is this happening in first round interviews or second round, or what's the walk us through that a little?
Usually in first interviews, oftentimes it's even before that. It might even be in a cover letter.
Okay. So you get a response back that it's not a good fit is what they're saying.
Exactly true.
Okay. And my hunch with it is that you're probably giving them too much information, and they're saying you're overqualified and they're moving you to another pile.
Exactly.
I want to hear from Drew on this one too. What are your thoughts, Drew?
Yeah, it's I think so. There's two things. One, if you've been in an industry for a long time and you're interviewing for a role within that industry, it's easy to assume that the person reading your resume knows as much as you do about your work, or reading a cover letter, or maybe even doing the first interview. But more often than not, the people reading the cover letters and doing the first interviews are career recruiters who know very little about the industry that they're recruiting for. And I experienced this a lot in this past cycle of applying for jobs. I probably talked to 10 different insurance companies, And I knew more about insurance than every first round recruiter that I talked to. And most of them were really good. Yeah. And most of them were really good about being upfront about it. They were like, listen, I'm a recruiter. I know people, I know, but I don't know the insurance industry. So I learned to be really cautious about jargon, detail, getting too specific about things until I knew the person I was talking to would register and connect with what I was saying. So that's the big thing that comes up for me. Just how's that landing for you, Scott?
That's really great.
Cool.
More focus on generalities.
Yeah.
I don't want to snow the people as well.
Yeah. That's it. I'm in the middle of getting my MBA right now. And one of the pieces of advice I got early on from a professor after I wrote a particularly wordy paper, loquacious paper, was your job here is not to show how smart you are. Your job is to convey a topic, convey an opinion, and to get people to understand you. And I think about that a lot in my professional communication. Like, I'm not here to show you how much I know. I'm here so you feel really good about the conversation we've had and you understand where I'm coming from.
You're great.
Cool.
I really like that, Drew.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Scott, so it sounds like you're seeing some ways that you're going to shift your communications to hopefully get more response.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, let us know how that goes. And if you want one-to-one support, reach out. I'm happy to talk with anybody for 15 minutes to learn more about you and to help you as much as I can in that time frame. So that we'll put a link in there in a second for anybody who wants to talk more with me offline about that. But Scott, work with that bottom lining things, getting the bullet points, especially the first 3 with your last job, in a way that really demonstrates that you get results. That's another thing. And there's a lot of little tricks that you can work with this, but get moving with it and let us know how it's going, and we'll keep supporting you and taking the next step. Sound good?
That's great, George. Thank you, Drew. Both of you.
You bet. Great question. Really appreciate you. And so a little context for everybody. This is how we roll. Any questions that you have, your job as people are asking questions and applying things is to look at how that applies to you. You might not be in the same industry, you might not be at the same point in your career, but we approach this work as from an open mind of, great, there's something for me to learn here. And when somebody's sharing vulnerably about where they're at in the process, we can learn so much from them. Learning vicariously is part of how we do this. So thank you, Scott. Great question.
I can appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. Fatima, it's great to have you on here. I would love to check in with you if you're available to share about where you're at and how we can support you.
I am, like maybe a few weeks into a job search.
Okay.
And, I had forgotten about this. So then I was like, hey, this is a great resource. Let me plug back in.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, I didn't come with a particular set agenda, but, what I remember is there's always things that you can kind of pick up from being in this lab. And already I've picked up a few good nuggets from Drew here. So, but I mean, I think if I had to ask for something, I would be open to like resume reviews, even though I feel like mine's in a pretty good place, or just some coaching on targeting the right opportunities.
Okay. Well, I think, I mean, you could send your resume over, we could pull it up online if you wanted to, and we can certainly look at targeting the right opportunities. Either
Yeah.
one of those is good stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to pull up my resume on the call,
Okay.
however. But I think targeting right opportunities, I think I liked what someone, I think Drew, it was you, said earlier about how, recruiters are really not experienced, in the conversations. When I get rejections, I imagine that they are not, kind of just seeing the same exact words that they're looking for. And so, it's upsetting, but I'm trying to remind myself of that. And, there's a part of me that's like, no job has ever turned out to be like its job description. No course of any particular role I've ever had has gone the way I've expected, and it's frustrating because I don't want to customize my resume for every type of job I apply for. It's too much. And I guess I'm orienting to the right person at the right company with the right role. My resume is going to resonate, or I'm going to resonate with them. And it's more of a numbers game or a relationship game, one of the two. And I don't mean that it has to be like, they can be in parallel, right? So on one end, I'm working my network, I'm reaching out, sending my resume, asking people to connect me. And then on the other hand, I'm applying to all these different opportunities where I have no relationships on LinkedIn, and then just seeing if they respond back. But I guess that's what I mean by like, am I applying to the right, right opportunities, right companies? Because I'm not sure if there's a better strategy as to how I'm going about my search. And really, that's the feedback that I would be most interested in right now.
Okay. This is good. It might help, Drew, maybe for you to share about how you got to how you were using your values and principles, and as a way to eliminate and be choosy about what you want to help you focus. That, Fatima, how's that sound?
I think it's good, but I also, like, there's a part of me that I guess is reacting a little bit, because I'm like, I'm not even at the point of being choosy. I have not gotten to the offer stage, right? Where, you want to at least have some offers to be choosy about. So I don't know, that was a thought that went through my mind.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Drew, go ahead, but I have a hunch. I'll circle. Oh, that was Scott talking. Well, so Fatima, I think my hunch is that what happens is when I don't have a job, I feel a lot of that anxiety, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I think that can get in the way of me having the clarity that I really want. And because I hear you asking for clarity as well, or saying, how do I know what's the right spot, or how do I streamline things? And it kind of sounds like you're taking this approach. And if you get clearer on the kind of company you want, I think that might stick out more and only help you in the approach it sounds like you're already taking.
I mean, I do agree that, well, I guess the part that I haven't made some sort of decision on is there's a part of me that's like, okay, I could hone down and say, I want this. I want a technology company similar to the ones that I've worked at, big company. I want an HR role or an employee experience role. I can get like super, super clear on those things. And at the same time, my priority right now is to not have a big gap. Like, I don't want a big gap. Not that,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Not that I
I
won't
get
recover,
you.
but I've had those experiences in the past, and I want to capitalize from the fact that I'm still technically employed right now. And, you know, the faster that I line something up. So there's a part of me that's like, well, I've worked at small companies. It would have been fine. I didn't like the culture. So I know I need a small company that has a good culture if I go there, or a
Mhm.
mid-sized company that has a good culture and good people to work with, right? Cool. But I don't care if it's a small, mid-size, or large company if I have good people and good culture. I also am not going to take a role at a big company where I don't have good people or big culture or good culture. So that I'm clear on from my personal experiences. The type of role that I could potentially do. I mean, I have HR, I have employee experience, change management, project management. At the end of the day, there's a ton of roles that I could do. And if the first two conditions of a good people and a good culture are met, I don't really care what you want me to do, because you're going to change your mind in 3 months anyways, right? Like, you're going to decide that you want me to do something totally different. So, you know, so I just feel like I'm a lot more flexible in that. I know there's things I enjoy more, like I enjoy programs where I can deliver results, but also be creative. I know that I don't really love jobs with a lot of repetition, right? Like, I'm the person that's delivering all the reports every Monday, and every week I go through that same process of creating the reports and sending them out. I much rather enjoy, how can we improve these reports? How can we take them to the next level, automate them, right? So that's kind of where I know what I don't like, and I know what I enjoy. So I think my question really is more about strategy, job search strategy, right? Like, do I kiss a lot of frogs and the goal is to kiss as many frogs as I can, right? And hope that one of them is a prince? Or do I ask my friends, hey, who are the princes that you know that you think would be a good match for me, and then go on dates with them? Or is there an alternative strategy that I haven't really considered, in which, you know, based off of your experiences, like, you're like, well, there's also this middle ground, or this totally different route that you haven't mentioned. Why don't you try these? So that's where I'm trying to optimize my job search strategy.
Okay.
Great question. George, I'd love to hop in if that's okay.
Yes.
So Fatima, I heard a lot of my story in what you were saying, especially in that idea that, like, I've kind of got 3 different buckets. I've got culture, I've got company size, and I've got the position itself. And if the right role can serve 2 of those, I'm flexible on the 3rd, and I can figure that out. I think I talked about that multiple times here over the past couple of weeks. So I feel you big time. And that's not untrue. The difficult part of it is that when you're asking people for help, they need a very specific thing that they can help you with. So that way they keep you in mind for something very particular. So one thing that I started doing was creating almost mini descriptions of what I wanted to do underneath that larger umbrella. And whenever I went into an interview or a networking conversation, I took some time to look at who I was talking to, and I decided which of those narratives they would resonate most with them. And I went into that conversation with a very narrow ask, you know, and so, like, you know, for example, like, I'm looking for a small company with a creative HR role where I can help establish best practices from day one. That's, you know, I'm looking for a growing, you know, and that's not all that you're looking for, but it's one thing that you're looking for. And if you can narrow down that message, it helps people be able to identify you in other gaps that they see in their network. So for me, the big differentiator was W-2 full-time position or 1099 contract or consulting work. And for a little while, I was talking about both, but I very quickly decided that based on who I was talking to, I was going to exclusively talk about one or the other. And there can be this feeling that, like, you're not casting a wide enough net, or you're not being totally honest or truthful. But the reality is that the people in our lives want to support us, but we just have to help them support us by crafting a really clear, easy to understand message. And once I was able to do that, I found the quality of my networking connections and the referrals I was getting was much, much higher. So from a strategy standpoint, that would be the primary thing I personally would be focusing on. What you're talking about in terms of applying on LinkedIn, talking to friends, family, spouses of friends, extended family members of friends, that's all really valuable too. And for me, the strategy that I took is that the LinkedIn applying was sort of what I did when I had a couple extra minutes in between meetings. So if I had 2 networking meetings with a half hour in between, I would try to apply to as many LinkedIn jobs in that half hour as possible. But if I had more than 30 minutes and really more than like 15, 20 minutes, I would try to find some other way to use that time that was a little bit more intentional and direct. Because we all know applying on those LinkedIn posts feels like just throwing arrows into a black hole and you're never totally sure what's going to happen. And the reality of it is it exposes us to a lot more hurt than we might be prepared for when we start getting rejections back. So I started to sort of limit, open and close the sieves of where I was willing to feel hurt, which was with people I was meeting with at least Zoom face-to-face versus sort of the anonymous bot rejections that can get a little tedious.
So you're saying, so when you said about, you said that when you were reaching out, if you had more than 30 minutes, you would use it more intentionally. So examples of that you found useful: reaching out to your network, speaking to someone, having a coffee conversation, things like that. I mean, what other types of things that you did you do that were more intentional?
So I would research on companies and people at companies. So if I really felt strongly about a company, then and maybe I'd applied but hadn't heard back, I found it really useful to find people on LinkedIn and see if there were any mutual connections and try to make inroads that way and be a little bit more aggressive and assertive, especially if I really, was excited about the company. And actually a really good example of that, there was one night where I got super excited about this emotional intelligence training company out of the UK. Like I saw this, I was like, this is where I want to be. I am so stoked. I applied for a job. I emailed the recruiter that was listed on LinkedIn. I connected with a couple other employees, and I realized that one of those employees was an alumni from my undergrad university. And we never knew each other, graduated years apart, but I sent her a message on LinkedIn and was just like, hey, I'm really excited about this. We went to the same school, just curious if you had an insight. She wrote me back almost instantly and was like, this is one of the most narcissistic, nepotistic companies I've ever worked for. I absolutely hate it here. And I'm really sorry to be the one that tells you this, but I wish somebody had told me before I started working here. And I was like, this is really unsolicited feedback. Like she could have said whatever she wanted. And, and it was great because I didn't spend more emotional energy on that company than I had to.
Yeah.
And so it's those types of things that I find a little bit more intentional than just kind of doing the easy apply or kind of doing the applications.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I agree that strategy could work both ways. Like you could research an opportunity, get to know some people, see if it's something that you want to push further. Or on the flip side, if you have an offer, then you can kind of do some more digging and find out like, hey, are the people there happy? Is this somewhere where I would like to be? Did so-and-so enjoy working with this person as their boss at their last company? Like things like that. So I think those are good reminders. Going back to, and I've forgotten the first point that you made. I think it was around, no, I don't remember it now. You
Fatima, are you asking about what Drew shared about how he got real specific?
Oh, I think the first part of what, that's right. You were talking about how you got, oh no, you talked about how you got specific in terms of your interviews, right? And you went in there basically, which is actually an excellent strategy. And it's not really disingenuous. It's in the sense of you're putting the foot forward that they want to see, right? And it's not like you're making it up. It's just that's the side of you that you're bringing to the front. I guess the thought that I had in that was like, well, I have to get the opportunity, to do that, right? Like right now I've had maybe like 2 conversations so far, maybe 3. But it's how do I get more FaceTime? How do I get the in-person interview, so that I can actually apply these strategies that you're talking about, because they're great. But I just need to get to that stage more.
And there are 2 strategies that I still have intention of fleshing out. Where I'm at now, it's not it doesn't make sense. But one is more in-person networking, like taking that step to find the in-person networking events in this. Are you in Chicago? Or are you another?
I'm in Chicago. Yeah. Are you?
Yeah, I'm in Logan Square. So like I was talking with somebody who's in the like nonprofit healthcare fundraising world. And I was saying, like, I don't even know if there's people doing in-person networking events anymore. And she's like, Drew, if I wanted, I could go to 2 a night for the entire year and like not even scratch the surface. Like they are totally out there. And so I believe that they are. And it's an economy of time thing. Like you got to find the right ones that work well for you and try to vet them out a little bit. But I do think there's a lot of value to getting to have that face-to-face connection with somebody pretty quickly. The other thing that I started playing around with that I didn't quite finish was the idea of a video resume and recording just a really short video on Zoom, exactly like this, and just saying hello, introducing myself, running through some high points in my resume. Because every job that I applied for, and I was like you, I applied for all sorts of different things within sales, business development, marketing. Every single one had a space for a personal URL. And I was like, this must be an actual thing now. Like, when I was first learning how to apply for jobs, 25 years ago, we just learned how to make resumes. But now it seems, so whether that's a personal website, a Squarespace or whatnot, especially if you're in the tech world, there may be some benefit to kind of looking into ways to diversifying the impact your resume has, especially if you have a lot of gatekeepers, these younger recruiters who are just looking at PDF resumes all day. If they get to watch a video or like see a cool Squarespace page that has your that has your info, you're going to catch that Gen Z attention like that, and suddenly they're going to be, this is a hypothesis, but I think it could be really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool hypothesis. I don't know, but I can't see why it wouldn't, how it would hurt you at the end of the day. So yeah, interesting. And the value of having a scannable, the resume that auto uploads into the ATS. Like a friend of mine was telling me, he's like, instead of changing your whole resume, you can actually embed a hidden image that has the job description of the job that you're applying for, so that the ATS will pick up all of those keywords without you having to reformat your resume. I haven't done it yet, but I don't know.
That's a
wait.
We're getting HR companies that will actually look for that. Once it gets past the bot, if they see that, they will kick you out.
Oh, they will?
Interesting.
Oh, good to know.
I want to ground some of this in yearnings, and for everybody listening, because Drew, what I was picking up from what you were putting down about your process was that at the end of it, you're following what you're interested in. When you got excited about something, your strategy had all to do with what was interesting to you. What felt good? Okay, 10 minutes, I can't really get in what I need to get in. So what can I get in this time? Oh, and these quick responses here, they're painful. I'm not going to spend half an hour sending out things into a black hole. It's just not worth it to me. And so you're tending to yourself in the process. And when you got excited about something, you doubled down, tripled down on it. And then it led you to the information that you needed. And as you're sharing, Fatima, about what your approach to this, I was picturing you and really paying attention to the stuff that you wanted, even as you were sharing before Drew shared about, here's what I like doing at a company. Mm-hmm. And the more that you can say that and communicate that, lead with that stuff, And that's only going to help people understand you better and weed out the stuff that doesn't work for you so well. And my hunch is that it's not the strategy isn't an either or, it's a both and. But what I was loving about what Drew was saying was that with the stuff that doesn't, you don't get a lot of return on your investment, don't spend a whole lot of time with it. And it was, I don't know, several months ago at this point, the CEO of ZipRecruiter put out an article that said, we barely hire from resume things on LinkedIn. Like it all comes in through networking.
I think that networking is a really good, I forgot about in-person networking.
It's easy to forget about. Yeah.
Existed almost to a certain degree. So I think that's a good reminder, because I agree, like the number of times that you're somewhere, or just by like working with someone. Like my job at Google, I got because I volunteered, not outside of my work. It was volunteering in my company, but I got to know some people who ended up, there, and then we're like, hey, what do you think? And, so just the power of relationship at the end of the day, in terms of, opportunity, as opposed to, what are the 20 things I can do to get you to not reject my resume because we don't know each other.
That's really, and I want to underline this for everybody who's listening. And if you're in a city, like if you're in a spot where there are networking events happening, places where you can be face to face, it really gives you an advantage. It will help you stick in people's minds, help you get a sense of what you want. So as things are opening up, you can really take advantage of that and get a leg up on people who aren't.
Yeah. And a lot of jobs are not even posted, right? Like senior level roles, they never get posted online, So I think that's part of the challenge too, is I'm like looking on here and it's like, everything is like basically requires me cutting my compensation in half. And I'm like, okay, how do those guys over there, with the VP titles do it, right? Like you see, I was, there was like one company, because I was having a moment where I was like, am I qualified for this? Am I not? And then I like looked at the CEOs of the company, and they like literally went from like analyst to like CEO. And I was like, I guess, if they can do it, I can do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like 20 job promotions. They just had an opportunity, however that came to them, and they grew into it and stepped into it. So,
and what you're talking about in terms of not seeing jobs that speak to your current seniority and your level of experience is something I ran into a lot as well. And what I began doing was, instead of targeting companies and job positions, I started targeting senior level, executive level recruiters on LinkedIn. And I started looking for individuals and what I ran into was some of these companies that charge multiple thousands of dollars to basically coach you through this whole process, which may work for some people depending, but I was able to find a couple of high-level executive insurance recruiters that were able to put my name out there and keep me in mind for things. I'm still getting little drips and drabs from that, even a couple weeks and months later. So that's from a strategy standpoint, getting in with recruiters, and then that's another area where they are getting hit up dozens of times a day. So anything you can do to differentiate yourself in that message, and whether it's a URL, video, whatever it might be, to help kind of set yourself apart. And one thing I heard you say, I just wanted to comment on, you mentioned like wanting to work in a good culture, which I think everybody wants to work in a good culture, but everyone has their own definition of what that means. And so, and like saying good culture, people are like, yeah, that's fine. Of course, we all want to have good culture. So coming up with a definition for yourself of what a good culture is a really fun way to set yourself apart. And it's a great conversation starter in interviews. Because most people, when I start talking to them, their first question is, well, what are you looking for? And I told them, I was like, I am looking for an industry that is actively growing. where the companies are fighting for market share and there's healthy competition out there. I'm looking for leadership who supports new ideas and has a high risk tolerance for new ideas. And I'm looking for peers, fellow, senior leaders, mid-level leaders that are as dedicated to personal and professional growth for them and their teams as I am. So I'm looking for a specific type of industry, a specific type of owner, and a specific type of peer. And that took maybe 20 seconds to say. That's kicked off so many great conversations with people because they resonate with one of those, and it can help open people up. And so it helps engage people with something more personal than just saying like good culture.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think
this is really, really good. And I'm also itching here because I see Tammy Taylor here, and we've got 10 minutes left, and I got a hard stop with a session at 1. So I definitely, Tammy, I want to make sure we get you in here. And this is fantastic. Drew, Fatima, thank you so much for sharing. Fatima, we may get to circle back in a second here, but I really want to check in with Tammy. Tammy, good to have you here. What can you share with us?
Well, 2 weeks ago, I was talking with you guys and thinking about like, how do I make my next career move? And as I went into my interview, I actually am talking with 2 different companies right now. I've had a 3rd interview with one company, and my recruiter for the other company has said that the client is ready to make an offer. So I potentially now have this conundrum of how do I sort these offers? And the anxiety that I feel about, I'm going to get these offers, but I don't actually have them. Right. And a lot has been coming up for me around that. Like, and then the self-doubt is coming in. Did they find somebody better? Did they, and the upset of that. And where I'm coming from right now is seeing some open, friendly people. And I'm having that measure of upset. I just had an interview this morning, and the director said to me, what is your expected range for compensation? And I applied for the analyst job, that like a senior systems analyst job. And what they want me to do is project management. And I didn't do the research on the salary range for that position. And I'm like, and decided to be honest and say, and I told him, hey, I consult. This is what I'm doing now. I don't have the data, and I would like somewhere between this much and this much. And I gave him a range. He's like, okay, great. I just want to make sure that we're not going to insult you with the offer and that it's actually workable. And I think that we can, work through this. So it's a wild ride. And I think also to acknowledge how upsetting going through an interview can be. Mm-hmm. And what Fatima was saying about, well, can I do this? Am I qualified to do this? And the whole host of self-doubt versus self-efficacy is coming into play here. Like, which one do I want? Which one's going to be easier versus which one will be more satisfying and help me achieve my life's purpose? And I like the conversation, Drew, about what we're talking about in what's interesting. What am I excited about? Where am I excited with one position and where am I excited with the other position, and compare my excitement. And so that's my big takeaway from the conversation we just had. I already know within me what it is that I need and want, and I can trust myself to choose.
Okay, cool. Good to hear, Tammy. And it sounds, is there anything that we can do, any questions that you have around as you're in this waiting to hear back mode?
Not really. It's one of those crazy things where I have been doing the activity that generates the interest, and now I have 2 potential offers, and I still have some recruiters that I'm circling back with and handing out my resume. So it is like exactly what you said. It's not necessarily dropping the the easy in apply. I have never gotten an interview for one of those. More it's from my personal activity on LinkedIn, liking people's posts or contributing in a comment, posting my own. And also one strategy that I have with my LinkedIn is that if I'm interested in a company, I follow them. And then I see who's in the company. And then I watch for key people in the company to post. And then I comment on their posts and develop a relationship there. And then if I see that there's something that I like in terms of job posting, I already have rapport with that person. And
not only rapport, but you have little antidotes that you can drop. So if you're interviewing with somebody that you've never seen on LinkedIn, but they mentioned something, and you can reference the LinkedIn post of one of their teammates.
Yep.
Then it's like you're integrating yourself into their culture in a way that shows them that you've actively sought them out.
Yes.
And so that strategy and that level of intention is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. And as we're coming up on time here, Fatima, I would love to see you again and hear what your takeaways are here. What can we expect between now and next week?
Expect in terms of
what is there anything that you want to have moved forward between now and next week? Anything that you're going to apply from today?
I mean, I am going to take the list of things, the ideas, and then I'm going to prioritize what I think is going to be, most helpful to me.
Okay.
And then I think I want to get a little more intentional in terms of like actually scheduling some of those time chunks. Right now I find that I'm just like kind of free flowing through my day of applying, networking, researching, and I freaking hate it. So just getting a little more structured. Let me just think. I mean, there's some really great stuff like the video resume, for example, like that's a great idea. So right now I'm just going to explore for the next week these ideas and try to come up with, the priorities that I want to focus on.
Okay, cool. And we'll send you some of the YouTube playlist, because one of the things that Drew shared about a few weeks ago was how he set up accountability. And that can be a really helpful thing. So putting that out there, Fatima, we'll follow up with that.
Oh, that would be great. Any resources or anything that you guys have shared amongst yourselves within the last, couple months even?
Awesome.
I'd love to get plugged into those.
Perfect. Great. Jane, thank you for dropping that link there. That's the Career Lab playlist. And so the recent ones would be ones to check out, Fatima, as well as anybody else. Yes, you bet. And as we're wrapping up here, many blessings. Thank you for joining in. Oh, Arundhati, we're just wrapping up. Great to have you joining in. I hope to see you next week. We are here every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. Our job is to support you in your career. Any question, you could be working on overall strategies like we got into today, or down to a quick question you have about how to deal with an engagement with somebody on your team. Anything.
George, I have a quick question. Is by any chance these recordings are available that I could access? Like I just missed it today. So.
You betcha. And actually, Jane, will you drop that list in there? You got it. Because I know Arundhati wouldn't see it because she just joined. Yes. So can
perfect.
You see that there?
Yes. It's on the YouTube, right? Okay,
yep,
perfect.
Beautiful. Yep, you can check on that. Great to have you. Drew, thank you again so much for joining in. I know you won't be with us next week, but we'll get you back next month. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Really appreciate
Okay.
it. Thanks so much, everybody.
You bet.
Thanks
Many
so much.
blessings, everybody. Tammy, good to see you. Fatima, great having you on here. Jane, thank you. And Arundhati, thank you. Many blessings.
Thank you so much.
You
I
bet.
missed it today, but I'll check out the YouTube list.
Cool.